Hey folks, how's it going? We are in a slow economic collapse right now, heading into another Great Depression. I've said that before. That's my belief. I stand by that because every day we get more people talking about it, more people expecting it. And one thing that I've picked up from most financial advisors, when the general consensus is that we're going into a bear market, then we're going to go into a bear market within a certain amount of time, simply because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People start expecting it to happen, and then they make moves, they make decisions that actually edges closer and closer to that. And it's honestly my belief that aside from people becoming more concerned with the potential for a recession or even a depression, that would lead into one. It's also my belief that those in power, the elites, whether they're the politicians, the elite bankers, or the globalists in charge, they want us to go through a great depression, an economic collapse, if you will, in order to usher in the Great Reset. You're constantly hearing the World Economic Forum talking about you will own nothing and you'll be happy about it. Everything will be provided by the state. They're talking about giving up your vehicles, you're not having your own personal form of transportation and having to rely on public transportation. You know, they're talking about moving away from animal-based food products into plant-based food products, lab-grown meats, bug-based meats, and what have you. And this, the more and more they talk about this, the more it's clear that that's where we're headed. That's the plan. And I believe everything we're seeing right now, everything from the pandemic on, is designed and intended to push us in that direction. And they can't do the Great Reset. The Great Reset can't start until they collapse everything, crash the dollar, and then instate a new digital currency. They have to crash the existing currency in order to instate and install the new digital currency. And that's something else that they've been talking about for a few years now, is a digital US dollar. China's already well on the way. Other countries are already well on the way. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. This is coming. Exactly when they're going to do this, I don't think there's any specific start date, simply because I believe the motion, everything's put in motion already. All the motions have started. All the pieces are moving. We're already in the process of this happening. And I heard one person talk about an economic collapse one time. Fernando Aguirre from The Modern Survivalist. He lived through the economic collapse in Argentina. And people that have lived through these events, they know what to expect. They know what happens. They can see it clearer than most anybody else. And they know what is coming. And he has mentioned several times on his podcast and in his interviews that there was no night and day difference between the change from pre-collapse to a collapse. It wasn't like everything was fine one day and then the next day everything just went downhill. That's not how it happens. The way he explained it was that it's a very slow process. I think he even used the analogy of it's like watching water circle around a drain. It slowly builds up and builds faster and faster and faster. And what we're seeing is, over the past 2 to 3 years, actually going back further than that, you can actually see signs of it beginning many years ago, because this has been a long, drawn-out process. This isn't something that's happened overnight. But you're going to see these events happen. And over the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen clearly they're coming more frequently and they're coming more severe. I've got 2 articles here that carry on that trend. This one was from Fox Business, published January 3rd at 8:58 a.m. So the article's title is Economic Category 5 Storm Brewing in 2023, Market Expert Warns. 2022 was the worst year for the stock market since 2008. And as you know, I've read an article earlier in one of my previous videos about it. The housing market is seeing its biggest correction, or second biggest correction, since World War II, or in the post-World War II era. So, after the most, I'm going to read this article here. After the most volatile year for the stock market since 2008, Wedbush Securities Manager Director Dan Ives warns on Mornings with Maria Tuesday that big tech companies will still need to rip the Band-Aid off in terms of layoffs as a Category 5 storm threatens the macroeconomic picture for 2023. Where to invest your money in 2023 after a rough year end in the markets. Host Maria Bartiromo, you've got a number of companies either freezing, hiring, or cutting their workforce. Is that going to continue this year? Dan Ives, and this is his response. Look, a lot of big tech, they were spending money like 1980s rock stars, and I think that really shows. Sometimes they were increasing 15 to 20% per year. I still think it's a rip the Band-Aid off. Still some more headcount cuts. We think potentially another 8 to 10% headcount cuts in big tech. You look at what happened with Meta, and that's a good example. Once Zuckerberg finally read the room, cut in terms of what he needed to. I'm sorry, folks. I'm bad at reading today, and this article isn't written very well. Once Zuckerberg finally read the room, cut in terms of what he needed to, stock ultimately lifted. I think, be that as a catalyst, I think you will see a continued cutting of heads in big tech because they're getting ready for the Category 5 storm in terms of what we're seeing with the macro. Now, that's a very short article, but it's his expectation that we've got essentially a Category 5 storm brewing economically for this year. I've already talked about how the stock market has fallen, ended the year worse. It's the worst year since 2008, as I've said. This next article comes from seekingalpha.com. S&P 500 has another 20% to fall as Fed continues hawkish policies, Satori's Dan Niles. All right, so Satori fund founder Dan Niles predicted Tuesday that the S&P 500 will fall another 20% from current levels as companies and investors continue to feel the pinch from the Federal Reserve's actions to tame inflation. I think as you look at 2023, we're going to start to see earnings estimates really starting to get cut as the economy starts to slow down, following the rate hikes in 2022. So there you go. Again, another expert, and I'm seeing this all over the place. Multiple experts, one right after the other, predicting very bad things are coming this year for the economy. It's my belief, again, and I've said this before, it's my belief we are already in a recession, already in the beginning stages of the next Great Depression. Companies are laying off. People are not, there are people in the labor market that are just not willing to go out and work on top of that, which is an odd conflict, to say the least. A lot of current workers in the labor force are expecting wages that are way higher than what they've previously known, primarily because of inflation, but also because they believe they're entitled to these higher wages for the work that they do. Whether or not they are, I'm not going to get into that, but the expectation is people deserve more money. Those increasing wages feed into inflation. And as long as inflation continues to grow, or at least does not come down sufficiently, the Fed is going to continue to hike rates. The result of that is going to be sending the market into a collapse. We're going to go into a depression. And again, my belief, this is my opinion, I believe we're already in the beginning stages of it. We're seeing things continuing to get more expensive. Wages are continuing to go up. I'm seeing now hiring signs everywhere from companies that can't get people to work for the wages that they're willing to pay. And at the same time, other companies are laying people off because they know what's coming. They're having to cut corners. They're having to cut costs. You've got conflict in Ukraine. You've got conflict in between the U.S. and China over Taiwan. You've got conflict between South Korea and North Korea, and even North Korea and Japan. You've got issues with Japan and China. So you're just seeing a mass of global conflict. And this is going to do nothing but build on the economic strain globally. And what the end result of this, my belief is, the end result of this is going to be major recessions and depressions worldwide, globally, that lead into a new world war. I believe this is necessary. That's probably also the reason why NATO and the United States are pushing so hard to go to war with Russia and with China, because they seem so dead set on going to war. It's almost like they need that to happen so they can start the Great Reset. The Great Reset, I don't believe, will happen until we go to war, the economy collapses, the dollar crashes, and then they can use that as justification for bringing in this new digital currency and resetting everything. And we already know throughout history, global conflict, or at least conflict in general, war in general, breeds famine, disease, and more war. Those are the three things that come with it. Suffering. There's a lot of death with world wars. This is what we've got to look forward to. I'm feeling, and I know a lot of other people are feeling, a sense of urgency when it comes to working on your preps. You've got to get your preps up to par. You've got to make sure you're ready for the things that are coming. This is not even so much just stocking food, although that has to be your priority. Your priority has to stock food, because if we're going into a series of global recessions and depressions, on top of global conflict like a world war, you're going to see rationing like we did during World War II, if not worse. Food supplies are going to be strained. The availability of food is going to be very limited and very controlled. Out of necessity, it's going to have to be rationed. It's critical that you stock food. But more than that, it's critical that you start to produce your own food. Plan to start producing your own food. I don't care if you've got a quarter-acre lot in a suburb somewhere. You can set aside 4 foot by 10 foot for a raised bed. You can set aside a small raised bed area, a small in-ground garden. You can set up a pots on a patio and grow something. Even if you live in an apartment, and I would highly recommend that if you live in an apartment, you move out. You find some other place to be besides an apartment. An apartment complex is going to be a nightmare in this this reality that we're facing. Not only in terms of the chaos that you're going to be exposed to and the danger that you're going to be exposed to, but also in that apartment prepping, it's hard to stock food and water and be sustainable in an apartment. There are channels that specialize on doing things like that. I don't live in an apartment. I don't think it's right for me to try to tell you how to prep if you live in an apartment, because I don't live in one. It's up to you to figure out what you can do. If there's any way possible, I would recommend getting out of an apartment. Apartment complexes are going to be, I hate to say it, but they're going to be death traps for preppers. But you need to stock food. You need to start producing food. Again, I don't care if you're just growing a few things in some pots, what have you, maybe a very small raised bed. Raised beds don't have to be big. You can have a smaller raised bed and grow a lot of food out of one of those things. Look up square foot gardening. Maximize your gardening space. Grow vertically if you can. There's a lot of options out there. And like I said, I know I'm feeling the pressure. I know other people are feeling the pressure as well to get this done as fast as possible. Get things done now. That's part of the reason why I'm so focused on my blacksmith shop right now, because that is not only a form of income if the labor market falls apart, but it's also a skill that I can barter with. And it's not just knives that I can make. I have the capability of making everything from nails to hooks to hinges to what have you. I can make all kinds of things. I can make garden tools. Those are skills that I have or I am currently developing aside from my knife making business. But that's why that's a priority for me, because it's not only income, it's also something that in an event of a collapse, it's something I can barter for other things that I need. Also, that's why I'm focused on the garden again this year. I'm wanting to try to expand it if there's any way possible. And why I'm going to pick up, and I've got a review of something that it just came in the mail today. Something I ordered to kind of get me another step ahead to fill in a gap in my preps. But I'm going to leave that for another video. But it's critical that you do these things. It's critical that you get ready in any way, shape, or form that you possibly can. We're headed into a dark future, folks. It's foolish for us to think that, it's foolish and naive for us to think that with all this chaos going on around us, that nothing's going to happen, that everything's going to be perfectly fine. Of course, everybody wants things to be fine, and that's what we all hope for. But it's very foolish and very naive to see everything that's going on right now and just think, oh, well, it's going to be okay. I don't need to do anything. You're setting yourself up for failure, because if everything does go down like we're expecting it to, if all this chaos does erupt, you're not going to have a source of food. You're not going to have a source of income. If it doesn't happen and you've prepped, you haven't lost anything. You've got all these preps that can still carry you through these tighter financial times. So you haven't lost anything that way. Prepping, you don't lose anything by prepping. All you do, you gain security, you gain peace of mind, and you gain self-reliance and self-sufficiency. No need to be dependent on anybody else or the government. That's all I've got. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. I hope you found this video helpful. Again, I've got a review I'm going to be doing probably tonight. I'll try to get that uploaded in the morning sometime. Stay busy, folks. Keep prepping. Don't get complacent. Get things done. Take care of yourselves and your family. And where possible, look out for one another. Until next time, folks, I'll catch you later.